Hey everyone, today we're standing at the edge of a conversation. Most men are too afraid to have the slow, silent death of a woman's interest. She's not angry. She's not cheating. She's just colder than she used to be. And if you think you can control how others feel about you, then maybe that's exactly what you haven't let go of yet. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise, and let's begin today's journey together. You never meant to become predictable, but somehow your good intentions, your daily texts, your careful planning, your devotion turned into something she no longer had to think about. And that's where the problem began. Because comfort is a double edged sword. It feels safe until it starts to feel like boredom wearing a warm sweater. At first, she smiled when your name lit up her phone. Now she glances once, presses the side button, and tells herself she'll reply later. Spoiler, she won't. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing everything the same. Human psychology is wired for novelty. Even our brains release less dopamine when a stimulus becomes familiar. The reward center goes silent not because it's broken, but because it's already seen this episode. You used to surprise her. Now she can predict the punchline before you finish the sentence. Think about it. You don't replay the same movie every Friday unless it's a Pixar classic or your life's falling apart. And even then, you do it for comfort, not passion. She didn't fall for comfort. She fell for contrast. The lightness you brought into her life. The unexpected text in the middle of her workday that made her smile like a middle schooler. The way you laughed at your own terrible jokes like they were Shakespearean comedy. And now you text her good morning before your eyes are fully open because it's habit. She doesn't feel seen. She feels scheduled. There's an old quote from Camus, not that anyone actually remembers it from philosophy class, that says, "Blessed are the hearts that can bend. They shall never be broken." But what happens when your consistency becomes stiffness, when bending becomes a flat line? Here's a quirky truth nobody ever lost. A relationship from not folding the towel correctly, but they have lost it from folding into the exact same version of themselves every single day. Philosophers still debate whether routine is the foundation of peace or the killer of romance. And maybe they're both right, because you can love someone deeply and still lose interest in who they've become. The smell of your cologne used to remind her of night drives and danger. Now it just reminds her that it's Tuesday. The takeaway: don't confuse loyalty with automation. Comfort isn't the villain. But if you want her attention back, you'll have to step out of the routine that numbed her to you. Not because she wants chaos, but because she wants to feel again. And the hardest part, you might have to reinvent the version of you that was easy to love before you started trying so hard to keep her. Here's the part no one teaches you. A woman doesn't just listen to your words, she listens to your energy. You might say all the right things. I care about you. I'm here for you. You're beautiful. But if your tone carries insecurity, if your posture is leaning in too much, if your vibe says, please don't leave, then guess what? She hears the fear, not the words. Emotions are contagious. She mirrors what you feel even when you're hiding it behind emojis and exclamation marks. And when your energy shifts from calm presence to quiet desperation, her interest isn't the only thing that leaves. Her respect goes with it. You ever walk into a room and just feel that something's off? You can't explain it. No one said anything weird, but something in the air says, don't get too close. That's what she picks up when you're anxious, needy, or emotionally leaking all over the place. There's an old psychological concept called emotional contagion. It's the idea that people catch moods from each other. You show up relaxed and confident, she'll relax too. You show up nervous, second guessing, hyper alert to her every reaction. Suddenly, she's walking on eggshells and blaming you for the mess. And here's a modern twist: texting accelerates this phenomenon. Because in the absence of tone, she fills in the gaps with your last known vibe. So if your last interaction felt heavy and secure or performative, even your what's up comes across like a trap. We're creatures of feeling. She might not consciously realize why she's pulling away. She'll say things like, I just need space, or I'm not sure what I want anymore. But what she means is, I can feel something in you that feels off, and I don't know if I want to carry it. And here's the quirky part: she'll never say, I stopped liking you because your energy became needy, because that would sound cold. Instead, she'll say she's just confused, which is woman code for I don't feel safe leaning into your emotional state. Let's bring in a real world example. Think about Tom from work. Every office has a Tom. He doesn't say much, but people trust him. He doesn't chase approval, doesn't over explain, doesn't shrink when tension rises. Now imagine if Tom started asking everyone whether they still liked him. Wouldn't that shift everything? You used to be like Tom, cool, composed, solid. Then somewhere along the line, you started reacting instead of responding. You became aware of her shifting tone, and that awareness turned into panic. Now your vibe screams, "Tell me I'm still enough." And look, there's no shame in it. You're human. You care. But she's not drawn to the version of you who needs reassurance. She's drawn to the version of you who gives it to himself. Philosophers still debate whether we can ever fully know ourselves through another. But one thing's clear. If your sense of self depends on how she reacts to you, then her withdrawal is not just a rejection, it's a wake up call. So here's your mission: stop trying to fix her distance. Fix the energy you're projecting. Be still, be solid. Be a man whose presence speaks louder than his pleas. Let her mirror strength, not fear. Because when you stop radiating uncertainty, she might just remember the calm she once found in your silence. There's a moment in almost every modern romance where the roles quietly flip. You don't notice it right away, but one day you're doing more, saying more, initiating more, and she's responding less. It's not that she's cruel, it's that she no longer feels what she used to feel. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. It's probably because you started chasing. Now let's clear something up. Pursuing someone and chasing someone are not the same thing. Pursuit is confident. Chasing is desperate. Pursuit says, I'm drawn to you. Chasing says, please choose me so I can feel okay again. And once she senses that shift, the magic evaporates. The masculine polarity collapses. There's this ridiculous scene in every rom-com where the guy shows up in the rain with flowers, a boombox, and a heartfelt speech. Women cry during that scene. But in real life, if you do that after she's already lost interest, you're not romantic. You're the guy who doesn't get it. The hard truth is, once you start convincing her to want you, you've already lost. Because desire isn't logical. You can't talk her back into it. You can't negotiate your way into attraction. It's felt or it's not. This is what psychologists call reactance theory. The more someone feels you're trying to control their decision, the more they resist even if they were neutral before. You chasing her attention makes her want to protect her freedom, even if she doesn't fully understand why. Let me give you a real-world comparison. Ever try shopping for something online and the moment you click, you get 3 pop-ups saying, wait, don't leave yet. Here's 10% off. And even if you were kind of interested, now you feel manipulated. So you close the tab out of spite. That's what chasing looks like emotionally. It pushes her away, even if your intentions are pure. And here's a quirky observation. You'll start to think that pulling away will make her miss you. But if you're doing it as a tactic, not a truth, she can smell the manipulation like crocodile-scented sunscreen, and she'll resent it even more. The reversal of chase and retreat is ancient. Philosophers still debate the role of power and attraction, whether love is a mutual surrender or a dance of imbalance. But either way, the lesson is clear. She doesn't want to chase you if she feels like she's being hunted. So what do? You stop running after, you stop performing. You stop bleeding energy into someone who hasn't asked for it. Not because you're bitter, not because you're playing a game, but because your self-respect is no longer up for negotiation. When you move from I hope she picks me to let me check if she aligns with my values, you stop being a chaser and start becoming a chooser. And here's the funny part. That's usually when she starts paying attention again, not because you wanted it, but because you stopped needing it. So if she's losing interest, stop chasing the ghost of what it was. Return to yourself. That's where it all started anyway. When a woman starts pulling away, most men do something instinctual. They lean in, they explain, they apologize for things she didn't even mention. They say, just tell me what you need and I'll do it. But here's the paradox. The more you bend to fit what you think she wants, the less of you there is to want. She didn't fall in love with a man who asked for a roadmap. She fell for the one who was the direction. The one who knew who he was, even when she didn't know who she was yet. That version of you grounded, centered, unshaken, he didn't ask how to lead. He just led. What happens when you lose that energy? You create what I call a masculine vacuum. It's the slow collapse of your presence, the silent space where strength used to live. And women don't say you've lost your masculine frame. They say, I don't feel safe with you anymore. Or worse, you've changed. Let's take a modern example. Remember when Instagram had that phase where every guy was working on himself? Gym selfies, green smoothies, manifestation quotes. All of it looks good on paper, but sometimes it's just armor. You're not building strength. You're masking insecurity because strength without direction is noise, and women can tell when you're spinning. Psychologists call this internal disintegration. It's when your identity fragments in an attempt to please, to adapt, to be liked. And instead of presence, you project confusion. Instead of safety, you leak chaos. Here's a quirky metaphor. Imagine being in a canoe with someone on a calm lake. You trust them to paddle. Now imagine that person suddenly throws the paddle overboard and says, "What do you want me to do next?" Not exactly romantic, is it? Philosophers still debate what defines the masculine essence. Some say it's dominance, others say it's discipline. But maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just stillness, a quiet strength that doesn't need performance. You don't need to fix her mood. You don't need to become her therapist. You don't need to prove your worth through emotional acrobatics. You just need to stop collapsing inward. If she pulls away, let her. Don't panic, don't plead, just stand. Like a mountain, not to intimidate, but to remain. Because in the void of your masculinity, she won't step in to save you. She'll step out to find someone else who doesn't need saving. So hold your ground. Stop trying to win her back through self-erasure. That version of you isn't who she loved anyway. Return to your center, the place she once found shelter in before you abandoned it to chase her approval. You didn't say it out loud, but you expected her to read your mind, to know that your silence meant you cared, to decode that your anger was just hurt in disguise, to sense that you were giving your best even when you didn't say a word. And when she didn't get it, you blamed her, quietly, internally. You told yourself she was ungrateful, cold, complicated. But here's the brutal truth. Unspoken expectations are relationship termites. They chew through the foundation quietly and visibly until one day the whole thing collapses. And nobody knows why. Women aren't mind readers, but they are mood readers. They pick up on tension. They feel when something's off. And when your energy says, I'm disappointed in you, but your words say it's fine, she feels the dissonance and loses trust. Let me give you a real world moment. You ever walk into a coffee shop and the barista smiles, but it's that forced, exhausted smile that says, I'm one decaf order away from quitting this job. You don't feel welcomed. You feel awkward. That's how she feels when you say, I'm okay with a tone that clearly isn't. Psychologists call this emotional incongruence. It's when your internal state doesn't match your outward behavior. It creates confusion, and confusion kills connection. Here's the quirky part. You probably thought being vague made you mysterious, that not expressing your needs made you low maintenance, that letting her decide everything made you a good guy. But in reality, it made you forgettable, passive, invisible. Philosophers still debate the ethics of expectation, whether it's fair to want something you haven't earned. But here's something most of them agree on. If you don't name what matters to you, you don't get to blame someone for not giving it. Now, I'm not saying you should unload your every emotion like a podcast with no off switch. But clarity is masculine. Directness is attractive. Saying, hey, when you pull away like that, it makes me feel unsure what's going on is 1,000 times more powerful than sending the seventh wide text at 11 p.m. The more you keep your real self hidden, the more she loses interest in trying to find it. Because relationships aren't about guessing, they're about knowing. So if you're sitting there hoping she'll suddenly get it, stop. Say it. Say what hurts. Say what you need. Say who you are. And then let her choose. Because if she chooses you after hearing the full truth, then it's real. And if she doesn't, then it never was. You don't lose value by being honest. You only lose those who never valued you in the first place. You probably thought being available made you strong, always ready to listen, always ready to text back, always there when she needed you, whether it was 2 a.m. or right in the middle of your own life falling apart. But there's a fine line between being emotionally supportive and emotionally exposed. And once you cross that line, you stop being the man she leans on and start being the man she leans away from. You were trying to show her love. She saw it as pressure. Because when you're constantly available physically, emotionally, digitally, you create a different kind of scarcity. The scarcity of absence, the loss of mystery, the suffocation of always knowing where you stand. People don't value what never leaves. And she may never say it out loud, but every time you made her the center of your world, she felt smaller. Not because you made her feel loved, but because you forgot how to orbit on your own. There's this old psychological concept called enmeshment. It's when emotional boundaries dissolve and two identities blur into one. You think it's intimacy, but it's actually erosion. You stopped having your own nights, your own hobbies, your own life. And while she never asked you to give those things up, she noticed when you did. And quietly, she began to withdraw. You became so easy to reach, you lost the gravity that once pulled her in. Let me paint a scene. You ever try to enjoy a movie when someone keeps asking if you're enjoying the movie? They mean well, but after the fourth. Isn't this scene so good you just want to leave the theater? That's what it feels like when you become too emotionally present, too reactive, too eager, too tuned into her every signal. She no longer experiences you as a partner, she experiences you as pressure. Here's the quirky observation. You don't hear about emotional overavailability in pop culture. You hear about toxic masculinity, about coldness, about men not opening up. But the opposite extreme is just as unattractive. The guy who bleeds his feelings into every conversation, who responds in paragraphs, who uses emojis like emotional crutches, he isn't seen as strong. He's seen as draining. Philosophers still debate the balance between stoicism and emotional transparency. But the real art is knowing when to express and how much. You don't need to become stone. You don't need to bottle up everything. But if your emotional faucet is always turned on, don't be surprised when she walks away from the flood. So pull back, not out of spite, not to punish her, but to recenter yourself, to refill the parts of you that used to glow even when she wasn't watching. Because when you give her space to miss you, you remind her that you're a man who feels deeply but lives fully, with or without her approval. There's a point in every connection where she starts pulling back, not because she's done, but because she's testing. Not in some manipulative way, not because she wants to hurt you, but because deep down she wants to see what you're made of when things stop going your way. It's not a conscious decision, it's biological, psychological, evolutionary even. She needs to know, can you handle her at her most confusing? Can you remain calm when she becomes unpredictable? Can you stay in your center when she throws a little chaos your way? Most men fail this test. They chase harder, they become reactive, they ask, what's wrong? Are you okay? Did I do something? And just like that, click the attraction switch flips off. Because the minute she sees you lose your grounding, she doesn't feel safe. Not emotionally, not energetically, not romantically. It's like being on a roller coaster and realizing the safety bar is a little too loose. Suddenly, the thrill isn't fun anymore. It's terrifying. Let's bring this into real life. You ever meet someone who seems totally cool until you don't text back fast enough and suddenly they're triple texting, spiraling, over explaining? That's what testing reveals. Not who you pretend to be, but who you actually are under pressure. Psychologists refer to this as stress testing. It's not exclusive to women. We all do it. Job interviews, friendships, even pets. But in romantic dynamics, it's primal. You might think she's being distant because she's over you, but what if she's just watching to see whether you collapse? Because the man who passes the test, he's the one who doesn't chase the shift. He notices the pullback and breathes. He doesn't react. He doesn't demand reassurance. He stays the course. He stays. And here's the quirky twist. She doesn't want you to pass the test by pretending you don't care. She wants you to pass it by knowing your value, by trusting yourself even when she's being a riddle wrapped in mood swings, wrapped in iced coffee. Philosophers still debate whether love is more about self-abandonment or self-reclamation. But the ones who last know the secret, if you have to abandon yourself to keep her, you've already failed. So when she pulls away, let her. When she goes quiet, go still. When she becomes unpredictable, stay consistent. That's the test, not to win her back, but to win yourself back. Because when she sees you stay grounded, when she senses you won't fold, just because the wind shifts, something changes. She feels safe again, drawn again, interested again. Not because you passed some invisible exam, but because you reminded her who you were before the test even began. You think she wants honesty? And she does. But there's a difference between being honest and being an open book with no pages left to turn. At some point, you stopped being intriguing. You started oversharing, over-explaining, over-presenting every detail of your life, your feelings, your plans, your trauma, your therapy schedule, your morning playlist, and your third-grade soccer injury. She didn't want all of that. She wanted you, the version of you who still had edges, still had shadows, still left something to the imagination. Because mystery is not about secrets, it's about depth. It's about making her curious. Think of your favorite movie, the one you've seen 10 times but still go back to. Why? Because there's always something new to notice, some subtle gesture, some line you finally understand. You don't want a plot that tells you everything in the first 10 minutes. You want a world that unfolds slowly, unexpectedly. That's what you were in the beginning, a world. Now you're a weather app, constant updates, zero wonder. Psychologists talk about predictive coding, how the brain gets bored when it can predict exactly what's coming next. It's efficient, but it's not attractive. And that's the issue. She can predict you. Your next text, your next joke, your next good night message with the same emoji. She doesn't hate it, she just doesn't feel it anymore. Here's the quirky part. You probably thought that by being transparent, you were building intimacy. But full exposure without pacing leads to emotional fatigue. Mystery isn't deception, it's rhythm. It's knowing when to reveal and when to hold. You ever try to binge watch an entire season in one sitting? Even the best shows start to blur after hour 6. Now imagine trying to binge a person's entire emotional inventory in the first month of dating. Not exciting, exhausting. Philosophers still debate whether love thrives on knowing or unknowing, whether closeness destroys desire or deepens it. But the truth is, desire needs space, a little distance, a little silence. You don't have to become distant or cold. You just have to pause. Let her wonder what you're thinking. Let her guess where you went for a few hours. Let her miss you without giving her a constant stream of updates. Rebuild your mystery, not by being fake, but by remembering who you were before you needed her attention to feel alive. Because when she can't predict every part of you, she starts leaning in again, not to decode, but to experience. And when a woman starts experiencing you again, that's when attraction returns. There's a quiet moment right before she pulls away when you start slipping, not in some dramatic meltdown kind of way, but in a slow, subtle unraveling where you stop being you and start becoming who you think she wants. It begins with little things. You agree with opinions you don't believe in. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You cancel your gym time because she might want to hang out. You trade in your backbone for approval. And just like that, the leak begins. The leak of your identity, drop by drop. You weren't always like this. You used to be magnetic because you had your own orbit. Now you're a satellite spinning around her moods, her schedule, her preferences. And you wonder why she loses interest. People are drawn to people who are anchored, not emotionally entangled, not overly adjusted, not nodding at everything like a bobblehead in a hurricane. Psychologists call this self-abandonment. It's when you disconnect from your values, preferences, and boundaries in order to avoid rejection. But what you think is saving the relationship is actually draining it. Because here's the paradox, the more you shrink to fit inside her world, the less room there is for attraction. Let me give you a real-world example. Think of your favorite musician. They've got a sound, a style, a vibe. Now imagine if their next album was a complete rebrand to fit what critics wanted. You might still listen, but the spark gone. Because it's no longer them, it's marketing. That's how you come across when you lose yourself trying to win her. She doesn't feel your authenticity, she feels your fear. Here's the quirky part. You think she's leaving because you're not doing enough, but often she's pulling away because you've done too much. Too much compromise, too much explaining, too much need. Philosophers still debate the nature of identity, whether it's fixed or fluid. But in dating, it needs to be felt. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be someone. Someone she can recognize. Someone she can trust. Someone who isn't shape-shifting with every gust of uncertainty. So stop leaking, patch the holes, return to the things that made you before she ever entered the picture. Your opinions, your standards, your weird taste in jazz hop lo-fi playlists at 2 a.m., own them. Because when you reclaim your edges, you become visible again. And visibility. That's where attraction lives. So if she's drifting, check yourself first, not for blame, but for truth. You can't hold her interest if you've let go of yourself. She used to light up when you texted. Now she opens your messages with the same enthusiasm she opens a work email. You didn't change, you just became constant, too constant. Attraction needs space to breathe, but you filled every empty pocket of time. You became her first good morning and her last sweet dreams. You were always available, always attentive, always just checking in. And in doing so, you became psychologically saturated. Here's what that means. Just like our senses get desensitized to constant stimuli, the same scent, the same sound, the same lighting, our emotions can numb out too. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. It's why a new car feels amazing for 3 weeks, then just becomes your car. It's why lottery winners go back to their baseline happiness. It's why even love can feel flat when it's too predictable. You gave her so much access to you, she stopped noticing the value of that access. Real world example. Think of your favorite song. You play it on repeat until suddenly, You don't. Not because you hate it, but because the magic wore off when the mystery disappeared. That's what happened to you. Not bad, not boring, just overplayed. And here's the kicker: the more you felt her slipping, the more you tried to compensate with even more contact, which only accelerated the saturation. You thought, if I show her how much I care, she'll stay. But care, when poured too often into a full glass, just spills. Here's the quirky metaphor: imagine spraying your favorite cologne 3 times a day. At first, it's intoxicating, but over time, your nose stops detecting it. Then others do too. Not because the scent changed, but because your presence got drowned in predictability. Philosophers still debate whether consistency or absence creates longing, but you already know the answer. Think of how you miss people. It's not when they're always around. It's when they pull away, just slightly, leaving you wondering, waiting, reaching. You don't need to ghost her. You don't need to play games, but you do need to become less of a constant notification and more of a rare signal. So reclaim your time. Leave gaps in the story, miss a call, take longer to reply, not as punishment, but as presence in your own life. Because when your world feels full again, you become harder to access and therefore harder to forget. And when she realizes that she hasn't heard from you, that she actually wants to hear from you, that's when the interest reignites. Not through force, not through strategy, but through space. Interest fades fast when you're always there, but it returns just as fast when you become a little less available and a lot more valuable. So now you know, it wasn't that you weren't good enough. It wasn't that she met someone else. It wasn't that love died. It was the little things. The way you forgot to remain a mystery. The way your presence became a default instead of a desire. The way you lost the quiet strength that made her feel something in the first place. Losing a woman's interest isn't always loud. Sometimes it just slips through the cracks. A missed laugh here, a shorter reply there. Until one day, the silence feels heavier than the words ever did. But this isn't a reason to panic. It's a reason to pause, to return to yourself, to remember that you're not here to perform. You're not here to chase. You're here to live fully, so fully that your presence pulls her in without a single word. So breathe, stand tall, and take back the space you once gave away too quickly. Because the man who knows his worth doesn't beg for attention. He becomes so rare, so rooted, so unmistakably whole that her interest doesn't just return, it deepens. You don't need to fix her feelings. You only need to fix the way you show up. So as this moment settles in your chest, let it teach you, let it remind you, let it change you. And when she wonders where you went, let your silence speak for itself. End of script. Have a beautiful day.